Please welcome the Education Director for FDIC and the Editor-in-Chief of Fire Engineering, Bobby Halton.
Good morning, and welcome to FDIC 2009. This marks the 81st Assembly of the world's greatest gathering of firefighting professionals. Thank you all for coming and sharing in this unique celebration. Thus far this morning, we've been privileged to participate in several beautiful ceremonies, all deeply rooted in our profession and all deeply symbolic of what we hold as precious, all deeply connected to our passions, our faith, and our purpose. It's fitting that we celebrate here because now more than ever, much that we hold as precious and dear is being threatened. We need to hold on tightly to what we know inspires us and others to do deeds worthy of great respect, deeds worthy of great honor. And we know in our hearts what these deeds are. And we would say that we know them when we see them. But we have to think about, what does that really mean? Knowing is about having an emotional connection. For example, we all know instantly how we feel about our country every time we see the flag, or how we feel about our military every time we see a soldier in uniform. People see their most sacred values in symbols, whether it be the flag, the Capitol building, the White House, the Statue of Liberty. People see, more importantly, who we are and what we represent through the symbols of our work. The meaning and the importance of these symbols must be passed on from generation to generation, or we risk losing the true intent behind them. Today, our communities need us to represent what they see in the symbolism of a fire truck. You see, whether we want to admit it or not, we are what other people believe us to be. Now, for the profession of firefighting, that's an honorable calling, but a grave responsibility. We want to symbolize the best of what others expect from us, but because we're human, we might fall short of being perfect firefighters. But belonging to this community is about simply getting back up and continuing to serve. Now, the writer Kurt Vonnegut, an Indianapolis native, whose words are up here on this stage, once said that the fire truck is the most stirring symbol of man's humanity to man. He did not say the fireman or the firewoman. He said the fire truck is the most stirring symbol. And he chose the fire truck for a very specific reason. More than ever, we need to embrace what Vonnegut meant by those words. He was telling us that this is our fire service, that the fire service is us. And with that ownership comes a heavy responsibility. Being worthy to represent man's humanity to man is something that we cannot take lightly. Vonnegut's words express how other people see us and what our mission is and what we symbolize to our communities. When Vonnegut identified the fire truck, he did it because it symbolizes serving a much higher purpose, and that purpose is self-sacrifice for others. The fire truck represents the greatest belief you could ever have in another person. It symbolizes humanity's greatest honor, a sacred honor, selflessness. The community expects to see that sacred honor in us, and we expect to see it in each other. We'll occasionally stumble, and we will come up short and have bad days. That's inevitable. But the symbol of the fire truck and our sacred honor will continue along despite our individual frailties. Vonnegut knew what he was doing when he chose the fire truck to symbolize our sacred honor. He understood what a powerful symbol the fire truck is. He understood how important our sacred honor is. He understood it doesn't represent one man or one woman, but rather this collective spirit that's not meek and cowardly, but it's bold and it's strong. You see, he saw this tool, the fire truck, as daring and innovative, as powerful. He saw the fire truck as fearless and dedicated and competent. And most of all, he saw it as compassionate, non-judgmental, and forgiving. This is how we see our profession. This is what we must strive forever to become and reflect. The sacred honor the fire truck symbolizes just doesn't come from the protection of life. It also comes from the willingness to take risks in the protection of other people's treasures. Those treasures might be art, they might be an automobile, a home, pictures of the loved ones, a business, or even a family pet. Recently, some have suggested that the only time that we should enter a burning building is when there's a life to save. But that ignores the importance of what makes a community, its commerce and its treasures. In the righteous cause of firefighter safety, we have spent our powerful talents redefining and re-examining our fireground operations and our culture and our behavior. And we will and we must boldly continue this worthy and meaningful work. We celebrate the fact that we have spent the last decade working hard to make a difference in our own safety, firefighters' safety. And we're blessed to have realized many wonderful programs and excellent results. But we must caution ourselves, because occasionally in our passion to make our profession more effective and safer, we have tried to control the uncontrollable. And we can never forget that it's our principles that matter most of all. We must always be willing to put others' welfare ahead of our own, because there will always be those who need us far more than we need them. The fire truck, more than any tool, represents to every community that there are members of that community who are willing to sacrifice their own precious time, their own collected treasures, their own humanity, and the protection of other lives, and who will execute well thought out, well supported, and skillful fire attacks when it's possible to save other people's treasures. We must accept and respect that sacred honor. We must answer this call to become that physical embodiment of what our communities see in the lofty virtues of the symbolism behind the fire truck. It matters deeply that when the scared, the threatened, hear our sirens and hear our air horns, that their hearts rise in hope. And the picture they see is not of you or me, but it's a 6-ton Medal of Honor. It's a fire truck. Recently I was told a story that shows how well-intentioned movements can affect even good man's judgments. There were firefighters in a Midwestern city responding to a multifamily apartment fire complex. The fire was caused by this exploding meth lab. And when they arrived, about 7 or 8 of the 14 apartments were well involved in flames. The firefighters en route were told of this woman on the phone with a dispatcher trapped in a rear bedroom. The dispatcher had told her to wrap herself in a blanket and lay low. As the firefighters battled this fire, the dispatcher told them that the trapped woman was no longer responding on the phone. And the last thing that she had said was, "God help me. Please, God help me." The dispatcher kept reassuring her that the firefighters were coming. Now, 5 firefighters are working on the 3rd floor outside this heavily involved apartment. It's blowing fire out every window. But they realized that this could be the apartment where that woman was trapped. And one of the firefighters thought he could make it to that back door. And he told the other 4, "You wait for me here, stand by should he needs any assistance getting back out." The firefighter then entered that heavily involved apartment, and despite the dangers to himself, he made it to that back bedroom door. He found that unconscious woman. He picked her up, and back through that same inferno, he carried her out to safety. That woman's alive today because of that man's heroism. During the briefing several days later, a chief officer, who was a personal friend of mine, a good man, a good and virtuous man, he stated that he felt those firefighters had taken too great a risk. He felt that the actions they took were far too risky, and that he never wanted them to do anything like that again. The young man who made the grab stood up and said, "With all due respect, Chief, when I was hired here, the chief of department told us that we will risk a lot to save a lot, and that's exactly what I did." That phrase, "risk a lot to save a lot," it comes from the NFPA 1500 risk-benefit passage, but I think it's stated incorrectly. I think in order to be true to what our communities expect from us, in order to be true to our sacred honor, that phrase should read, "We will risk everything to save a savable life. We will risk everything, including our own lives, to save a savable life. That is what our sacred honor means. That is what the symbolism of the fire truck represents. That's why we're called the bravest. That's what Vonnegut meant when he said that this is the greatest symbol of man's humanity to man. This symbolism, this sacred honor, they're not just words or lofty ideals. We saw these words come to life in Clarence Center, New York this year. This winter, when Continental Flight 3054 flew into heavy ice and she became unstable. The pilots fought bravely to regain control of this aircraft, but she fell on a home in Clarence Center, New York. As two of the residents of that home crawled to safety, Flight 3054 and 49 passengers and crew erupted in a fireball. The firemen and the firewomen of Clarence Center Volunteer Fire Department did not only do what the citizens of Clarence Center expected they would do, they rose above and beyond the occasion. And although they couldn't save the 49 souls and the homeowner from that tragic event, they honored that sacred trust. They did their best. They did everything they could to save the property on either side of that inferno from becoming engulfed and destroyed. They let that fire claim no more property than what it had when they arrived. Today in this room are those heroes from the Clarence Center Volunteer Fire Department, and they would deny to you that they were heroes. They would say that they could not have done it alone. The Clarence Center guys and gals, are you here? Would you please stand? Please. Remain standing. Now, Chief Dave Case would say that he couldn't have done it without Assistant Chief Tim Norris, who was the first man on scene that night. And Chief Norris would say that he couldn't have done it without the other members of the Clarence Center Volunteer Fire Department. And all of the Clarence Center Volunteer Fire Departments would tell you that they couldn't have done it without the 22 other fire departments who responded that day. And they were successful, and this is according to Chief Case, because of how they studied here at FDIC, because of how they trained here at FDIC, and because of how they honored that sacred trust. They're all humble men and women in the Clarence Center Volunteer Fire Department, and they would say that they're just regular firefighters. But we know that like the firemen and firewomen of the Clarence Center Volunteer Fire Department, that we have trained here at FDIC, and we have studied here at FDIC, and we have exercised our minds, and we have exercised our bodies, and our minds and our bodies are ready. But in a deeper sense, we have exercised our hearts, and our hearts are ready to be the symbols of man's humanity to man. And if God calls us to put ourselves between the threatened life of our fellow man and danger, we will not disrespect that trust. We will not fall short of our sacred honor. Communities today need their fire service, career and volunteer alike, to rededicate ourselves to our core value of service to humanity. In the days ahead, we're going to be asked to sacrifice, and we will not complain. We'll be called upon to compromise, and we will not fail. We'll be tested, and we will prove ourselves as worthy to ride in man's most stirring symbol, most inspiring symbol, the fire truck. You see, it's about our nation's expectations. It's about our principles, and it's about the sacred honor of the fire service. Thank you. God bless you all. God bless America. And welcome to FDIC 2009.